The rescue fleet arrived without weapons. That was the first thing every scanner in the system confirmed. No targeting arrays. No missile signatures. No shield spikes indicating combat readiness. Just a formation of clean, white-hulled vessels drifting into the war-torn star system, broadcasting on every known frequency. Humanitarian mission. Medical aid. Evacuation in progress. The war had already devastated the region. 2 rival alien powers had reduced entire planets to ash, their conflict spreading like a disease across nearby colonies. Civilian ships fled in broken convoys, many never making it out. Distress signals filled the void like echoes of a dying world. And then, humanity arrived. The lead vessel, HSF Mercy's Reach, opened its hangars. Dropships poured out, not fighters, but medical transports. They moved quickly, guided by the desperate coordinates of survivors scattered across debris fields and shattered orbital stations. Inside those ships were human medics, doctors, and volunteers. They didn't ask who you were. They didn't care which side you fought for. If you were alive, they came for you. Across the system, something extraordinary began to happen. Injured soldiers who had been enemies hours ago found themselves side by side in human care bays. Alien children were carried gently into sterile rooms. Wounded pilots, some barely breathing, were stabilized by hands that had never held a weapon. For a brief moment, the war paused. Even the combat fleets kept their distance. There were rules, ancient, universal rules. You didn't fire on the unarmed. You didn't attack the healers. Those laws had held for centuries. Until they didn't. The first shot came without warning. A beam of concentrated plasma tore through one of the outer rescue ships, cutting it in half before any alarms could sound. For a split second, confusion rippled across every channel. Then came the second strike. And the third. Panic erupted. We're under fire. Repeat, we are under fire. Medical ship designation. We are non-combatants. Shields failing. Patients on board, please. The transmissions overlapped, desperate and disbelieving. The attacking fleet bore the signature of a rising alien empire, one known for its aggression, but never for breaking the old laws. Until now, their warships advanced without hesitation, weapons blazing. A dropship filled with evacuees exploded mid-flight, scattering debris and bodies into the vacuum. Another vessel tried to shield a cluster of civilian transports, only to be torn apart by a barrage of kinetic rounds. Still, the humans broadcast, over and over. We are unarmed. We are here to help. Cease fire. There was no response. Only more destruction. On the bridge of Mercy's Reach, Captain Elena Voss stood frozen for half a heartbeat, staring at the tactical display as red icons blinked out one by one. Every flash was a ship. Every ship carried lives they had come to save. "Get them out," she said, her voice tight but steady. "All ships, prioritize evacuation. Pull back if you can." "But there are still thousands," her officer began. "I know," Voss cut in quietly. "Get them out." Outside, the stars burned with violence. What had entered as a fleet of hope was now a field of wreckage and drifting corpses. And across the galaxy, the recordings began to spread. The images, the pleas, the unmistakable truth. Humanity had come to save lives, and someone had chosen to make them a target. They didn't just fire on a fleet. They fired on the one thing humans valued above all else. And somewhere, far beyond that broken system, Earth was watching. The footage reached Earth in fragments. broken transmissions, corrupted data streams, final messages cut off mid-sentence. It took hours to piece together, longer still to verify, but once assembled, the truth was undeniable. They had fired on a rescue fleet, not by accident, not in confusion, deliberately. Across every major city on Earth, the same images played in silence. A dropship bursting into flame while carrying wounded civilians. A medic shielding an alien child moments before both were consumed by vacuum. The final transmission from Mercy's Reach, Captain Elena Voss's voice, steady even as her ship died around her. "We are unarmed. We are here to help." And then, static. No music. No commentary. No outrage. Just silence. For 12 full minutes, every network broadcast the footage without interruption. Then the screens went dark. No speeches followed. No emergency addresses. No calls for restraint. Only a single official statement from the United Earth Council. Confirmed. We are aware. Nothing more. To the rest of the galaxy, it was confusing. Human space, usually alive with signals, trade routes and diplomatic chatter, went quiet. Too quiet. Merchant vessels approaching human-controlled systems were turned away without explanation. Military observers reported that entire fleets had vanished from known patrol routes. Listening posts detected encrypted traffic surging between Earth and its colonies, but none of it could be decoded. It was as if humanity had stepped back, withdrawn. Some thought it was fear. Others assumed political division, debates, hesitation, uncertainty. They were wrong. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, far below its cities and oceans, something old had awakened. Strategic command had not convened in centuries. Not like this. Admirals, generals, and analysts gathered in chambers that had been sealed since humanity's last existential war. No cameras. No records beyond what was absolutely necessary. The kind of place built not for diplomacy, but for decisions that could end civilizations. The footage played again inside that room. No one spoke while it did. When it ended, the silence remained, but it was different now. Not shock. Not grief. Something colder. Verification, one voice asked. Confirmed across all sources, another replied. No evidence of provocation. No weapons aboard any human vessel. No warning issued prior to attack. A pause. Then, intent. Deliberate. That single word settled everything. There were no debates after that. No arguments. Only process. Orders began to move, not through public channels, but through systems buried so deep they didn't officially exist. Shipyards that had been dormant lit up without announcement. Fleets recalled decades-old contingency codes. Weapons platforms long dismissed as obsolete quietly powered on. Across human space, millions of people went about their lives, unaware that something vast had just shifted beneath their feet. But some noticed. Freighter captains spoke of empty routes where patrol ships used to be. Border worlds reported sudden redeployments of defense grids. A few sharp-eyed observers caught glimpses of massive silhouettes moving in the dark between stars, ships that weren't listed in any registry. Warships. Old ones. The kind you don't show unless you intend to use them. Beyond human space, the galaxy speculated. They're afraid, one diplomat suggested. They're isolating, said another. They'll respond with sanctions. Perhaps a limited strike. No one imagined the truth, because humanity had learned long ago that anger was inefficient. Emotion clouded judgment, and what was coming required absolute clarity. No rage, no hesitation, no mercy shaped by impulse, only decision. Back on Earth, the Council released a second statement, even shorter than the first. Stand by. That was all. No demands, no warnings, no attempt at negotiation. Just two words that echoed across every system listening. And then, for a brief moment in galactic history, humanity disappeared. Not gone, not defeated, just silent. The kind of silence that doesn't mean absence. The kind that comes right before something irreversible begins. The first human strike did not come with a warning. There was no declaration, no broadcast, no final demand for surrender. One moment, the alien empire's outer defense grid stood intact. Layered shields, patrol fleets, early warning stations. The next, it was gone. Not damaged, not weakened, erased. A wave of precision strikes tore through the system in perfect synchronization. Defense platforms blinked out before they could raise alarms. Communication relays were severed in the same instant they tried to transmit. Orbital shipyards, massive constructs that had taken decades to build, vanished in controlled bursts of light. It was over in less than 3 minutes. And then the human fleet appeared. They didn't arrive through conventional jump points. They emerged from vectors the Empire didn't even monitor, angles once considered strategically irrelevant. Dozens of ships at first, then hundreds, then thousands. Sleek, silent, and terrifyingly coordinated. No formation chatter. No wasted movement. Just purpose. Panic spread through the Empire's command structure. Emergency channels lit up across their networks. Unidentified fleet in Sector 7. We've lost the outer grid. Repeat, we've lost. Where did they come from? No answers came, because there was no time left to ask questions. The second wave struck deeper. Military command centers, buried beneath kilometers of reinforced alloy, were hit with pinpoint accuracy. Energy cores overloaded. Entire installations collapsed inward, as if crushed by invisible hands. Warships scrambling to launch were destroyed before they cleared their docks. Every target was chosen with terrifying intent. Weapons, logistics, command, nothing else. Civilian zones remained untouched. That was when the realization began to spread, not just through the Empire, but across the watching galaxy. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't vengeance. This was design. They're not attacking randomly, one observer whispered over a neutral channel. They're dismantling them. And they were. The Empire's fleets attempted to regroup, pulling forces from nearby systems to mount a counterattack. Massive armadas converged, bristling with weapons, ready to crush whatever enemy dared strike them so boldly. They never got the chance. Human forces intercepted them mid-transit, not with brute force, but with flawless execution. Jumps calculated down to fractions of a second. Ambushes laid along routes that should have been unpredictable. Entire squadrons disabled before they could even identify their attackers. Shields collapsed under focused fire that seemed to know exactly where to hit. It was as if humanity had studied them, learned them, prepared for this, long before it ever happened. "Open channels!" an Imperial commander shouted, his voice breaking as his flagship shook under sustained impact. "We demand identification. State your intent." For the first time since the assault began, humanity answered. The transmission cut across every frequency, overriding signals with calm, unshaken clarity. A single voice. Measured. Controlled. This is the United Earth Defense Command. Another impact rocked the flagship, alarms screaming in the background. You fired upon a marked humanitarian fleet. No anger. No rise in tone. Just fact. You will no longer possess the capability to do so again. The channel closed. Moments later, the flagship went dark. Across the galaxy, the message spread faster than the destruction itself. System after system reported the same pattern. Surgical strikes, overwhelming force, absolute control. No negotiations. No hesitation. No mercy extended to those who had chosen to show none. Observers began to understand what they were witnessing. "This isn't retaliation," one analyst said quietly, watching another Empire system fall into silence. "They're not trying to punish them." A pause. "They're removing them." And for the first time in generations, the galaxy felt something it had never associated with humanity. Not respect. Not curiosity. Fear. By the time the Empire understood it was losing, it was already over. Not in the way wars usually ended, with desperate last stands, burning capitals, and drawn-out sieges, but with something far more terrifying. Certainty. Every system they controlled was being reduced with the same cold precision. Not glassed. Not indiscriminately destroyed, but stripped, methodically, of anything that could sustain power. Shipyards were gone. Fuel depots erased. Command networks collapsed into silence. Even their data cores, vaults containing centuries of strategy, expansion plans, and military doctrine, were surgically wiped or seized before they could be purged. It wasn't chaos. It was disassembly. At the heart of the Empire, panic turned to desperation. High Command convened in their capital, deep within a fortress world that had never fallen, protected by defenses said to be impenetrable. Massive shield arrays surrounded the planet, layered in overlapping frequencies. Defense fleets orbited in tight formation, weapons charged and ready. For the first time since the war began, the humans slowed. They didn't strike immediately. They waited, and that terrified them more than anything else. "They're giving us time," one of the Empire's senior strategists whispered, staring at the growing mass of human vessels assembling at the edge of the system. Thousands of them, silent, motionless, watching. "Why?" another demanded. Why would they stop now? No one answered, because deep down, they already knew. The transmission came moments later. Not a demand, not a threat, an offer. Power down all military systems. Surrender all command authority. Prepare for occupation. The chamber erupted. Surrender? A general spat. After what they've done? They've destroyed half our territory, another shouted. We still have strength. We can still. They're waiting, the strategist cut in quietly. Waiting for us to choose. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, all eyes turned to the central display, to the footage that had started it all. A human medical ship, unarmed, burning. They won't stop, the strategist said. Not a warning, a realization. They're not here to win. They've already done that. His voice dropped further. They're here to make sure we can never do this again. The decision came too late. Pride, fear, denial. Whatever the reason, the Empire chose to fight. The moment their weapons powered up, humanity moved. It was not a battle. It was an ending. Human ships surged forward in perfect unison, breaching defenses that had stood for centuries. Shield layers collapsed one by one under concentrated fire. Orbital fleets were dismantled in minutes, their formations shattered before they could coordinate. The fortress world, once untouchable, was surrounded, not destroyed, contained. Precision strikes eliminated command centers, weapon grids, and leadership bunkers. Escape vessels attempting to flee were intercepted and disabled, not with explosive force, but with calculated restraint. No one escaped, but not everyone died. Hours later, the firing stopped. The capital still stood, but it was silent. Power grids offline. Defenses gone. Leadership captured or confirmed dead. The Empire no longer existed as a threat. Across the galaxy, the final reports came in. Every military asset neutralized. Every expansion route severed. Every capacity for war removed. Not a single civilian population had been targeted. Not one. And that was when the true weight of what had happened settled in. Humanity hadn't lashed out. They hadn't lost control. They had chosen this. Every strike, every target, every outcome. In the ruins of their command chamber, the last surviving official of the Empire sat in silence, staring at the darkened screens around him. "We tried to surrender," he murmured. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. They hadn't tried soon enough, because the ones they had attacked had never been given that chance. The war ended the same way it began, without ceremony, without celebration, and without a single human voice declaring victory. Across the galaxy, the guns fell silent. Human fleets, once an overwhelming presence in every contested system, began to withdraw just as suddenly as they had appeared. No occupation banners were raised. No territorial claims were made. No speeches echoed across the stars. They simply left. In the former territory of the fallen empire, something unexpected followed. Relief ships. Not warships, though a quiet escort always lingered at the edges, but the same white-hulled vessels the galaxy had once recognized as symbols of hope. Humanitarian fleets. They moved through the broken systems with calm efficiency, distributing food, medical aid, and infrastructure support. Worlds that had braced for oppression instead found themselves receiving assistance, offered without demand, without condition, to former enemies, to those who had once cheered the attack. No distinction was made. If they needed help, humanity came. There, helping them? One observer whispered over a neutral relay, watching as human medics evacuated injured civilians from a damaged colony world. After everything that happened, no one had an answer, because the answer didn't fit the patterns the galaxy understood. In time, representatives from dozens of species gathered in a neutral system, not for negotiation, but for understanding. They had all seen it. The footage of the attack, the silence that followed, the precision of what came next. And now, this. A single human delegate stood before them, not a soldier, not a politician, but a quiet figure in simple attire. No guards, no visible authority. Yet every eye in the chamber remained fixed on him. "We do not seek to rule you," he began, his voice calm, almost soft. "We do not seek your territory, your resources, or your submission." A pause. "We came because a line was crossed." The chamber remained silent. "You attacked those who do not fight," he continued, "those who exist to preserve life, regardless of allegiance." Another pause. "We will not allow that to become acceptable." No threats followed. No ultimatums. They weren't needed, because everyone in that chamber already understood. In the cycles that followed, something changed. Not through conquest, not through treaties imposed by force, but through fear and respect, and something else that was harder to define: clarity. New accords emerged across the galaxy, stronger than the old ones, clearer, absolute. Protections for medical ships, civilian convoys, and rescue operations were no longer suggestions or traditions. They were laws backed by a reality no one could ignore. Because now there was precedent. Stories began to spread, not just of the destruction, but of the restraint, of the way human fleets had avoided civilian targets with impossible precision, of how they had stopped the moment the threat was gone, of how they had returned, not as conquerors, but as healers. On a quiet world once scarred by the Empire's rule, a child, rescued during the final days of the war, watched as a human medic treated the injured in a makeshift field hospital. "Why are you helping us?" the child asked softly. The medic paused, then gave a small, tired smile. "Because that's what we were doing when this started." Far beyond that world, on Earth, life returned to normal. Cities moved. People worked. The silence that had once gripped the planet faded into memory. No monuments were raised for the war. No victory parades filled the streets. Only a single inscription was added to a memorial deep within Earth's capital, one not broadcast, not advertised, but quietly placed where those who needed to remember would find it. "Do not harm those who save lives." And across the galaxy, in every system that had witnessed what happened, a new truth took hold, not spoken loudly, not written in grand declarations, but understood. Humanity was kind. Humanity was patient. Humanity would help anyone. But if that kindness was betrayed, if those who healed were turned into targets, then humanity would not respond with anger, not with chaos, not even with vengeance. They would respond with certainty. And when they did, there would be nothing left to question.